Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bayou Bets. It is Monday, November the 20th, 2023. We are set to go here. Got a lot to talk about. Before we get to my friend Spencer, we remind you that Caesars Sportsbook is the official odds partner of bet.nola.com, and we politely ask you to subscribe to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. By doing so, not only are you helping us, you're helping yourself because you'll always know when we're on. Every Monday, every Thursday at 4 p.m. Datitude is on Friday at 10 a.m. But see, if you don't subscribe, you wouldn't even know that we have program changes this week. We are going to be on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Datitude is going to be on Wednesday morning. But we have a lot to talk about. Let's get to the topics of the day. Spencer, what is going on? All kinds of things going on.
Yeah, most definitely, Jim. Yeah, busy weekend coming up. Going to have the Saints, LSU, and Tulane. Jayden Daniels, Heisman talk, college football playoff talk, and the Pelicans are still around. So, yeah, a lot going on.
Yeah, they're sort of around. All right, Jesus. He couldn't wait. Go Tulane. You lost. You lost.
They finally covered. Tulane finally covered. Woo.
Yeah, see? Stop betting on Tulane against Tulane. Stop picking against. That's part of what we'll be talking about today. You see the topics up there. We're going to start off with the Saints, but we're going to probably spend more time talking about Jayden Daniels on this show than we will about the Saints or the Tulane Green Wave. Nothing against those teams, but we just think that today's hot topic is Jayden Daniels and whether he is the Heisman favorite, he's the betting favorite. Whether that means he's the real favorite or not, we'll talk about that. Whether he should be the favorite and what we think. That's all coming up. Gabe Henderson is going to come on. Sports betting director Thomas Casale is going to come on in a little while. So we're going to save LSU for last. So if you came on just to listen to LSU, we asked you politely not to leave, but we understand if you have other things going on. That is going to be in about 15 minutes or so. We're going to start off today, Spencer. Also, we're going to give a Monday night preview, a Monday night football preview. Obviously, Super Bowl rematch, Eagles and Chiefs. We'll tell you what we think about that. And then we're going to talk about Tulane and the Pelicans, as Spencer said. All right, let's get right to the Saints because we jam-packing a lot of stuff into the show. Spencer, the Saints get back to action after a week off. Their nemesis, their rival, the Atlanta Falcons, have also had a week off. And really, if you look at it, I think you could look at these two teams, Spencer, and they're really what and what. They're pretty much the same team, just kind of different personnel here, but they've kind of done the same kinds of things this season.
Yeah, for sure. You can't count on either one of them. And that's just true. And it's in Atlanta. So right now I'd probably lean that way. It's a pick 'em. Derek Carr still Derek Carr this season is such a mess. Can't even say his name right. Derek Carr is in concussion protocol still. And I feel like that could end up swaying who ends up favored. I feel like if Carr is cleared, the Saints will probably close as like a 1.5 point favorite. But if he's not cleared, I could see the Falcons being favored, being that Jameis is just even more unreliable with his propensity to turn the ball over.
I actually don't think the Saints will be underdogs. I think that even if it comes out that Derek Carr is not going to play, I don't think it's going to move the line all that much, just from what I've seen. I think, if anything, I do think that if Carr, I think it's already built in that Carr might not play, just from what I'm looking at, because the Saints were a slight favorite at one point before they got to the bye week, and this kind of dropped to pick them. I just don't think. Now, we may feel differently, and the average Joe Saints fan might feel differently, but I think the Sharps don't feel there's much difference between Derek Carr and Jameis Winston. We'll see if that makes a difference as we go forward, because hopefully by Wednesday's show we will know the answer, although we may not, because they really they're probably just getting back from vacation, and we may not know the answer to that when Derek Carr is going to be out of concussion protocol. We may not know the answer until the weekend, so we'll have to follow that as we go along. I do find interesting that, we talked about last week during the bye week, last Monday when we did this show, the Saints were minus 125 to win the NFC South. More money keeps piling in on the Saints. Obviously, the bettors think that the Saints are going to win the NFC South. And should they?
I mean, yeah, because they've got the easy road and have the best team on paper. But with that being said, I don't really trust them, so I wouldn't touch that number. I mean, I still feel like the division's very wide open. Tampa's got the tougher schedule, so I probably wouldn't touch them. But if Atlanta can win this game, I think they're going to win the division. I think, I said it last week and I'll say it again, I think the winner of this game wins the NFC South.
I think the winner of this game wins the NFC South if it's the Saints, because the Saints have a chance to take a 2-game lead in this division. I don't think there's any way anyone can really say they think the Falcons are going to win this division. I mean, if you think the Falcons are going to win the division, then you think the Falcons are going to win the division. But I don't think you can judge that from this game.
Yeah, I've been saying I'm more on the Falcon side, but
no, I get that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if the Falcons win this game, they're back to even. And the Falcons don't even really have an edge because they play again in the Superdome in the last week of the season. I think that what's likely, if the Falcons were to win this game, I think it's likely that it comes down to the last game of the year. I think if the Saints win this game, then they're going to go in cruise control. And then you're really going to see a whole lot more roller coaster because they're not going to have a sense of urgency. I mean, in a really weird way, I mean, obviously you want the Saints to win. I'm not saying anyone should want the Saints to lose, but in a weird way, this team's almost better off if they don't win this game because they'll be forced to compete the rest of the season. Whereas if this team gets a 2-game lead, I don't know how they react with a 2-game lead. I don't know that that's good for this team to have a 2-game lead. So I don't know. I'll make a prediction on this later on in the week. I don't have a real feel for it right now. I have not got to my, it takes me a full day to go through each matchup and kind of dissect things and go through recent trends and history and all that. So I'm not willing to say one way or the other, but there's no question in my mind. I don't need to look at any trends or anything. The Saints are clearly, and I know you don't agree with this, but I think the Saints are clearly a better football team than the Atlanta Falcons. I just don't. I mean, they're clearly better at quarterback. The only position they're not better at, you could argue, even though Arthur Smith doesn't know how to use them, is running back. I think Bijan's probably a better running back than what the Saints have, even Alvin Kamara, but he doesn't know how to use them. So, I mean, Arthur Smith's a worse coach than Dennis Allen. I know people hate Dennis Allen, but bad. So, I mean, two average, mediocre football. Is anybody going to watch this besides us?
I mean, I think the one more thing about Atlanta and the reason I've been more on their side is I feel like the way they're just more of a younger team that doesn't really have much to lose. Like, I mean, if they would not win the division, I don't think they're just going to completely blow everything up. Where I feel like the Saints, there's more pressure on the Saints. There's more pressure on this group you got a lot of older guys like Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, guys that this might be their last shot at a playoff appearance. And
that's true.
So
I think that's definitely true.
To me, there's just more pressure on them. And just looking at their history under Dennis Allen, I know it's not that long of a history, but just from what I've seen, like last year against the Bucks, I mean, they had that and they somehow found a way to blow it. I just don't trust this team, as you like to say, Jim, one iota. So I can't pick them. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I know on paper they've got the talent to do so, and I can see why the Sharps like them, because I know the Sharps are more just they look at just the stats,
they don't put any heart in anything. They don't
exactly
no heart in anything.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't. So I can see why they like the Saints, but just from someone that watches them each week and sees how they react to things, their reaction after losses and stuff, I just don't feel like this team has the heart. I hate to be like that, because I know they've got a lot of great guys
have the heart
in that locker room, but I think it's easier to believe when you're a younger team. When you're a team like the Saints that's just gotten consistently been a letdown now. This would be 3 years in a row of missing the playoffs.
I think you're way overestimating Arthur Smith. He is an awful, awful football coach. He has no right being a head coach. I mean, you can say whatever you want about Dennis Allen. He's earned his dues and he's paid his dues to get to where he is, whether you think he should be a head coach or not. Arthur Smith has I don't understand where Arthur Blank got the idea that he was going to make this guy a head coach, but he's never been a head coach. He can't be a head coach. And when he's done with this, he'll never get a chance to be a head coach again. And he's going to get fired after the season's over. Because I really think, what I think is going to happen is, even if the Saints kind of limp to the finish line, I don't think they're going to have to be that great to win this division. Because I think the Falcons are that bad and are going to limp to the finish line and be lucky to go 7-10. That's where this team is headed. And if they get some new leadership and get a quarterback, I think they could be really good going forward. I think you're right about them being young and having a chance to, at some point, being good, but not with this coach. I mean, you can say whatever you want about our coach, but just not good. So that's where I think they are. We'll find out. Look, the Saints rankings changed a little bit from last week. They didn't play. They went down in offensive ranking and up in defensive ranking. They were 12th last week in offense and 10th in defense. And I guess some teams really stunk it up on defense because Saints didn't even have to play and they moved up to 8th. So that's always a good thing. All right. Again, we're going to save LSU for last. We're going to get to Jayden Daniels in just a little bit, but I want to move on and talk about the Tulane Green Wave. Finally covered, as you were joking about a little while ago, Spencer, and Uncle Big Nick was typing in. Here's a weird – I don't understand this at all. Tulane wins this game against UTSA. Again, no gimme by any means, but they're going to play the AAC championship game at Yeoman Stadium. Why are they an underdog?
I just think because the way SMU's been playing that they probably should be favored because they've looked like the better team in the conference games. I mean, Tulane struggled a lot in these conference games where SMU has looked like the more dominant team. And so I understand why they're favored, but I mean, Tulane's the team that they did it last year and they've still got that moxie about them. They won now, there's like 10 in a row, 9 or 10 in a row. And I think it's 9 in a row. This would be 10 if they beat UTSA, which I think they very well could because UTSA's coach is in the running for the A&M job. His focus might not be all the way on this game. I would hope it would be, but you just never know in those kind of situations when you're dealing with things outside of your current job. So
interesting you say that. I did see some comments from him. He's kind of playing up the fact that they're underdogs and like playing down. I like what Jeff Traylor's been saying. I think that he is I like this guy. UTSA doesn't have any long history or anything, and they've come out of the CUSA and now they're in the AAC where they're undefeated. Their first year in this conference and they're undefeated. You got to give this team a lot of credit. This is a game that I'm not sure what's going to happen. I wouldn't bet it you couldn't bet me to bet it. And Uncle Big Nick's kind of right. Yeah. He says every coach in the country is
even Dan Campbell.
Who knows? I mean, maybe Nick Saban's going there. Who knows? But I like what I hear from the UTSA side. I guarantee you that they're not going to come into Yeoman and be intimidated at all. But here's the thing. I just don't get this. I don't know what people see in SMU. Gabe was talking about it last week in his Big Bucks pick. He had Memphis. They didn't impress me all that much by barely beating Memphis this past week. So I don't get that minus 150. If they have to come to Yeoman, I think that's an interesting game if that happens. But you're right. Tulane's got to beat UTSA, and this line kind of surprised me. I really thought Tulane would be like a 6-point favorite, but it opened up 2.5. Sharps pounded on it at Tulane -3. I don't think it stays at -3. I think this one goes up to 3.5 or 4 before Friday. We'll find out. Before we move on, you look at the yardage, and I thought that Tulane's stats, the stats were more in line with what Tulane's been able to do as of late, Spencer. Hold FAU down, and you look at that. There's a reason why Tulane's one of the best rushing defenses in the country. They didn't do real well against Tulsa, but they gave a couple long runs. FAU just shut them down. Only allowed 32 yards on the ground.
Yeah, they finally just had a really complete effort there. But the Tulane's rushing attack a little lacking. Michael Pratt showed out a little better, which is good to see. It seemed like he had been kind of, I don't know if it was because of injury or just like they playing cat and mouse, but it was good to see him kind of get in a groove here because he's going to have to be in a groove in this UTSA game. UTSA has a really legit offense. Thomas, I'm sure he'll agree with that, being that he has a future on them. So I think that'll be a really good regular season finale there to see who gets in that AAC championship.
Michael Pratt is now the leading passer in Tulane football history. And I know you can laugh and say, what kind of history is that? Well, you're talking about a history that goes back over 100 years. So, I mean, it goes even no matter what kind of football history a team has, when you're talking about going back that far, that's impressive. And Tulane, for the first time in school history, they've won 10 games in back-to-back seasons, and their 22 victories since the start of last season are the most in the country, behind only Georgia and Michigan. So that's actually saying something. That is really impressive. UBN's talking about Frank Harris. He is really good. I think we'll see where this goes. Look, I like Tulane in this game. I don't know if I'm willing to put money on it or not, but we'll see. We'll see. We're going to come back. We're going to talk more about Tulane on Wednesday when Thomas and I put the show together, because I think we both think that this is an interesting game, not only because of this particular game, but where it could lead to going forward with the Coosa. And, Gabe points out that SMU is favored because they have an easier road. But, that doesn't, to me, that the odds are a little bit skewed here. You're talking about plus 230 and plus 350. I think if UTSA wins, I think that maybe they should be favored. I don't know. We're going to move on to the Pelicans. Had an interesting up and down kind of week, Spencer. Great win on Friday against the defending champion, the Nuggets, and then looked like they were going to beat the Timberwolves in a late collapse. They just fall apart at the end, kind of like they did quite a bit last year, and now they're sitting at 6-7. Early in the season, I guess your record doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of things, but you're at this home stretch. They're doing better than we thought they would, but man, when you got chances to win games like you had against the T-Wolves, you got to put that away.
Yeah, it didn't help though that Zion was out due to rest.
Oh, God.
Second leg of a back-to-back. So, yeah, just, I don't know, man. With this Pels team, you just got to accept that this is how they are. They're going to look great one night, then collapse the next. This just seems to be how they're a play-in team. I mean, they're a play-in team. I mean, they'll probably make the play-in. If they can get out of that, they might give someone a good first-round series like they did a couple years ago against Phoenix. But you just never know with this team because of Zion being so unpredictable. If you can guarantee me that Zion's locked in, and I'll be like, well, then, yeah, this Pels team will be a top 6 seed in the West. But I've just accepted that you can't count on Zion. He's not going to play more than 60 games. If he plays 60 games, count yourself as lucky and just got to hope that could maybe sneak in a top 6 seed, but more than likely going to end up a play-in team.
Yeah, and I had that stat up there that the Pels are actually minus 105 to make it to the play-in. So already the bettors are thinking, people that bet on this sort of thing are already saying, you know what, the Pels are no better than number 7 in the West, and we think they'll fall right in that 7 to 10 window. So, I mean, they're better than even money, or I should say worse than even money to fall into that play-in spot. That's who would want to bet that right now? Someone out there is betting it, I guess, because it moved. It was plus 120 last week. All right, and the Pels are now plus 120 in their group division in the in-season tournament. I mean, I tried. I can't watch this court. I can't even look at that court.
It's blind.
I want to go blind. I'm like, it gives me a headache. I mean, I don't know, man. And then they're wearing these black uniforms with like Seattle Seahawks neon behind it. I mean, that's not your colors. Those colors are fine, but that's not your colors. Why do we wear colors that aren't our colors? I don't never understood that. You have to explain that one to me.
That's this in-season tournament thing. All the teams are doing like that. They're just trying. It's basically trying to make it a little, make it stand alone from just a typical regular season game. But
you mean a marketing ploy?
Yeah, it's definitely a marketing ploy, but to me, a kind of poor one because I don't really see many people talking about it. If you're gonna do this tournament, don't do it in the middle of freaking football season.
It's really dumb. Really, really dumb. But I mean, if you do it in January, then I'd still rather watch college basketball. That's a whole different story. All right, let's move on because again, we're saving Jayden Daniels for the end. We have an interesting conversation in pre-production, and it's really interesting because we went on. I mean, our pre-production meeting was probably about 30 minutes, and I think we spent 20 minutes talking about this. So let's bring on Gabe and Thomas, and I'm gonna start with you, Spencer. I think this. Jayden Daniels has done everything he can possibly do, right? I mean, there's not much more, no matter what he does this weekend. I mean, I guess he could go out and lose it. We were kind of talking about this, and I think Thomas and I both agree that he can lose it this weekend, but he can't win it. What else does this guy need to do?
I mean, there's really nothing else he can do. I mean, statistically speaking, he should be the runaway favorite. He should be more like minus 500 if we're just talking pure statistics, because you also got to factor in his rushing. I mean, when you compare to passing, he's pretty similar to Nix and Penix, but when you throw in the rushing, because neither Nix or Penix have hardly any rushing stats, to me, it's clear and obvious that it should be Jayden. But as we talked about in pre-production, the typical Heisman voter doesn't just look at statistics. They view things more from the story. Oh, did they lead their team to X, Y, Z? And if the Nix or Penix one of them leads some like thrilling victory in the Pac-12 championship game and puts up 500 yards, 6 touchdowns, or some crazy number like that, don't be shocked if that person ends up taking it from Jayden, even though for the year Jayden clearly has the best numbers.
Yeah, and Thomas, I think you and I both agree that while we would personally vote for Jayden Daniels, I mean, it doesn't really matter what we vote for. And Joe Q Public doesn't think about when they're going to make a bet. They don't necessarily think about what goes into the bet. It's what they think should happen, right? And so in this case, Jayden Daniels isn't really a value at -25 if you want to go out and bet it, even though you might sit there and think, how can he not get it?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't bet it right now. I mean, you've already missed the value on Jayden Daniels. And see, the thing for me is, many years ago when I worked for the Patriots, I met a guy named Andre Tippett. I'm sure you remember him, Jim.
Sure, absolutely.
And Andre Tippett told me something I couldn't believe. At that point, he wasn't in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And so that led me to do an article. It took me like 8 months on just voting on these types of things. And I talked to a lot of different voters on how they vote. And when I talked to Heisman voters, they admitted to having personal biases. I talked to 2 people in Chicago, one who was voting for Brady Quinn because he was the local boy, and the other who wasn't voting for Brady Quinn because he hated Notre Dame. So doing that kind of just gave me a perspective on how some of these people vote. And I think we have to take that into account, that if I had a vote, I vote for Daniels. I think he's the best player in the country. But you got to remember, there's people out west who would like to see one of those quarterbacks win. And I think that those biases can come in. And so you made a good point in production, Jim, and I'm sure you're going to talk about this, that the value right now is on Michael Penix. Because if Daniels were to lose this week to Texas A&M, it comes down to the game with Oregon and Washington. That the winner of that game is going to win it. So, I think you look at value and you have to look at how guys are going to vote, or people are going to vote on this. And I don't think every Heisman voter votes for the best player in the country.
I think you're absolutely right. And UBN doesn't have a lot of good points, but he has one here. Daniels left the Pac-12 to play better competition than the SEC and did better. Nix did the complete opposite. He left the SEC to go play in 100%. The Pac-12. And also, to what Thomas was just talking about, Gabe sent me some tweets. And Gabe, one of them really, really got me here. This guy is an Oregon radio announcer. Okay.
There you go.
Stop with it just goes to exactly what Thomas said. Stop with the Jayden Daniels Heisman hype. He'd hold a clipboard at both Oregon and Washington. No, he wouldn't be dumb enough to go there. That's the big difference. He would never go to Oregon or Washington, Gabe Henderson.
Here's the best part about that. That idiot has a Heisman vote. He's voting on the award.
Don't make me spit out water in the middle of a show here.
So, it's exactly what you guys have been talking about. Thomas talked about the West Coast bias, and maybe there is, I thought about this earlier, and Uncle Big Nick brings up a good point. Jayden Daniels played at Arizona State, so maybe there's a shot that he can kind of split that Pac-12 vote down there in Arizona. But really, it's people out in the West Coast that are going to be really pushing for a Pac-12 guy, especially in this last year of the Pac-12. But yeah, it really comes down to what you're voting for in the Heisman. It's the same debate that we have, that everyone has, any sports fan ever, with MVP awards. Are you voting the most valuable player, or are you voting the best player? I think Jayden Daniels is both of those things, but people aren't voting best player in the country.
There's a reason why Bo Nix left Auburn, and it wasn't because, Auburn wasn't a great place for him. Bo Nix was 2 steps away from holding a clipboard in the SEC. He lost his job to TJ Finley, for God's sake. Does anyone remember that?
That's Texas State quarterback TJ Finley.
Yeah, exactly. So, it does work both ways, though. Now, look, Cody Worsham is an SEC guy. Jayden Daniels but his facts are correct. Jayden Daniels has a better passing efficiency and more total yards per game than any player to ever. He should have capitalized ever to win the Heisman. Only Joe Burrow has accounted for more points per game than Daniels. He still has 1 regular season remaining. Look, when Joe Burrow won the Heisman, he won the Heisman in runaway fashion. It wasn't close. And to me, one could argue if some kind of weird world that we live in, you put Joe Burrow of 2019 against Jayden Daniels of today, it'd be a two-man race. They would be fighting one another. I think you could say they're what and what. You would, and look, Joe Burrow had more weapons than Jayden Daniels has, and I get how good Malik Neighbors is, how good Brian Thomas has been, but you think about everything else that Joe Burrow had and that crazy good defense to go with it. How many NFL players were on that team, period? I mean, it's just insane. So, look, it's like Thomas said, if I had to bet right now, I don't think Penix would win it. I don't think he's going to win it, but I certainly don't think it's out of the question, and I certainly don't think it's more than 6.5 to 1. Penix is better than Nix, in my opinion. I think he's going to show it when they get a chance to play in the Pac-12 championship game, and I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. I'm looking forward to it, but if Jayden Daniels loses this game, no matter what he does, he can go 32 for 32, throw for 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. But if the LSU defense can't stop Texas A&M and they lose, they're not going to give it to a 4-loss quarterback. I think we all agree on that. And so I'll be interested to see if that's how it goes. But, you know, what else can he do? Thomas, I don't know what else anyone would want him to do.
No, and you made a good point about Burrow. Listen, some years it is what it is. Like, if you didn't vote for Joe Burrow or Cam Newton or Bo Jackson, there's not much I can do for you. Exactly. Those are the Heisman winners.
Right.
This year, it's kind of, you know, there's 3 people. I will say this, though, and you can use this for or against Bo Nix. Oregon, even though they lost to Washington, Oregon has the best team out of the 3, meaning defense and offense.
I agree.
Oregon's defense is better than Washington. So, you know, that if Daniels had any kind of defense, we wouldn't be sitting here right now debating this. Like 100%. You said, Jim, it would be Joe Burrow all over again. I don't know if you can penalize a guy who's putting up these kinds of stats because his defense isn't very good in the toughest conference in America. They lose 3 games. I think he's got to win it.
Spencer, I wonder if these Oregon lovers were thrilled when they heard Bo Nix was transferring to Oregon. I mean, were they jumping up and dancing? Yes, Bo Nix is coming to Oregon, baby.
I mean, in Bo Nix's defense, he's definitely improved. I mean, I'm sure he could at least be in a slightly above average SEC quarterback these days. But, I mean, Jayden Daniels is the elite. I mean, he's the best quarterback in the SEC. So, to me, Bo Nix, and this is about the teams. The teams thing to me shouldn't matter in this. This is an individual award. Who cares if he's a 3-loss or even a 4-loss quarterback? I mean, if he's clearly got the best statistics, it's not his fault that his defense is one of the worst. Like, that, to me, that shouldn't matter. I know that's not how the voters think, though. I know a lot of times when it comes to quarterback, oh, what's his record? And to me, that just shouldn't matter because this is an individual award, not a team award.
See, I read this wrong when Nick sent this. It said Nix improves because the competition decreased. I thought it said Nix improves because the competition deceased. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean, you know, people are talking about, well, LSU played these bowl eligible teams. Oregon played these bowl. The Pac-12, you want to talk about Jayden Daniels padded his stats against weaker competition. The Pac-12 is weaker competition. The entire Pac-12 is weaker competition. I mean, I don't know that UCLA could beat Florida. I mean, I really don't. I don't think – Thomas, you tell me, you watch probably more college football than I do. Do you think UCLA that'd be a pretty decent game, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if that was a bowl game, the line would be close to even, I think. Listen, did Jayden Daniels do anything to lose the Alabama game? Was he the one not stopping the run? You know, the quarterback drive. Like, I don't know. Like, if he played the Alabama game and he was the reason why they didn't win, then it doesn't matter what the stats are. But that didn't happen. So, listen, I think it's going to be razor close. But again, I think the edge that the other two have is they will likely be meeting in a championship game on a Friday night with no competition, everybody watching.
You say it's an edge, it could hurt them. I think it could hurt. It could hurt one of them.
If the game is close, I think where that's gonna hurt is if one team blows out the other and the quarterback is the star. then like all the people, I said this to Gabe earlier, all the people on Twitter right now saying give the Heisman to Jayden Daniels. We know how quickly Twitter changes its opinions, right? It'll be give the Heisman to Bo Nix. He deserves it.
All right, Gabe. I'm going to wrap up this segment with, you sent these some more tweets. This is true. I mean, again, a reason why, to me, Jayden Daniels wins the Heisman. This is the reason why right here. Every LSU, Carter Carell says, every LSU game can be summarized as Jayden Daniels threw for 450 yards, rushed for 200 yards, broke 6 more records, while his defense gives up 700 yards, and LSU wins 59-52. I mean, it's true. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And, this Heisman race really reminds me of 2012. I don't know how well you guys remember that, when people were actually debating Colin Klein against Johnny Manziel, because Colin Klein played on an 11-2 Kansas State team. As
I don't even remember Colin Klein.
Exactly. And if you go look at the stats, it's not close. And it's because, as you talked about earlier, the people that are going to be voting on this, and there's no way to take away this bias, unfortunately, but it is what it is. There's a lot of people you'll talk to, you'll see on social media, Jayden Daniels, he's got all the stats behind him. I put it out earlier. Jayden Daniels is outperforming Bo Nix as a quarterback, and he's out-rushing Oregon's starting running back. I mean, that's unbelievable when you think about that. So if you look at the narratives, Jayden Daniels is better statistically, but all the narratives, if you ask any Oregon fan, it's like, oh, well, LSU sucks. LSU's got 3 losses. That's why Jayden Daniels shouldn't win it. It's like, I'm sorry he can't play corner, or he can't, be a linebacker for this team. He probably could as well as they do, but it all comes down to narrative versus stats, and people love a good narrative, unfortunately.
Ask most Saints fans whether they would rather Bo Nix as their starting quarterback or Jayden Daniels, and I think the answer is pretty easy to figure out. And anyone who says Nix should probably go feed pigeons on Sundays, because football is not their thing. They really should pick something else to do. All right, before we go off the air this afternoon, again, programming note, we're going to be on at 4:00 on Wednesday this week. Wednesday. We don't want you to gargle up your Thanksgiving dinner and miss any football on Thursday. So we're not going to make you watch us on Thanksgiving. We're going to come on Wednesday, make you gargle up whatever you're eating that day. All right, going back to this and Monday Night Football, 20 seconds each, guys. If in case you didn't know and you haven't watched TV this week, it's a Super Bowl rematch. The Eagles are playing the Chiefs again. They played last year in the Super Bowl. I don't know if anyone remembers that or not. It's all I've heard for a week. Thank God this game is finally getting over with. Spencer, who you got tonight?
Oh, man, yeah, I broke it down and did a little preview on it, and it's setting up pretty well for the Chiefs. I feel like, Mahomes and even Kelsey the past couple weeks haven't been quite as good, but they're fresh off their bye, and their defense, Chiefs defense this year, has been on another level. So I'm thinking they can give Jalen Hurts some trouble. He's had the bye week, but he's still kind of dealing with a knee injury. So I'll go with the Chiefs 27-20, and not because Taylor Swift's there, because they're just that good.
I was waiting to see who was going to bring that up first. I mean, thank God. I mean, you got to bet every Travis Kelce prop on the planet, right? I mean, she's going to be there. And not only that, I heard that she's bringing her mother, and her mother is going to meet the Kelce mother. Oh, it's a whole big to-do. I mean, thank God. I mean,
bigger than the game itself.
Probably. I mean, anyway, this line, Gabe, is KC -2.5, but I haven't looked in the last hour or so. It was about to go to 3. So if you want to bet 2.5, if you can still find it, I would do it now. If you like Philly, maybe you wait until game time.
Yeah, here's the thing. Philly's better all across the board. It's same scenario as the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Their defense is a little bit hurt, but here's the thing. The Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not making that mistake again. Spencer mentioned it earlier. The Chiefs defense is playing excellent. They've allowed 2 receivers this season to go above 80 yards. They've kept Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra all at bay. For selfish reasons, I hope A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts do well for my fantasy teams, but I'm not picking against Patrick Mahomes again, especially at home.
So you're saying that if TCU played Georgia again, you wouldn't make that mistake again either?
No, I wouldn't.
Oh, wow. TCU sucks this year. That's the only reason. Otherwise, you might make the mistake again. Get that face paint ready. We'll figure out something good to go. Thomas Casale, what you got?
Yeah, for the newsletter, I gave out Rashee Rice over 43.5 yards. 17 receivers have gone over that number against the Eagles this season so far. I think the teams are even like I thought they were in the Super Bowl, but I will say this. Whoever's pass rush / secondary plays better, I think wins, and I think that's probably going to be Kansas City.
This has got, first of all, I think it's a low-scoring game. I like the under. And if anybody watched Big Bucks the other day knows that I have. This is why Philly's all set up to win this game, because we all like Kansas City tonight, and Kansas City is the last leg of my money line parlay. That means I either have a winning week or a losing week, one of the two. So, the Eagles are going to win. You know what I think is going to happen here, really? And you see this all the time. Saw it last night. Kansas City, I think the spread's going to get to 3 before game time. I bet you Kansas City wins and doesn't cover. Then everybody loses. Vegas has had so many of those lately. It's been the percentage. I got to go look this up. But the percentage of winning and not covering has to be higher this year than way higher. Tom, would you think the same thing? Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I know. I remember before last night's game, a couple people tweeted out best scenario for the books is Denver winning and not covering. So 1 or 2 point win would be good. And then that's exactly how it landed.
And not only that,
it's unbelievable.
The things that make you go, is Denver. And look, I know there's no way they're not. Sean Payton would never do this, but there's no way they're not trying to get the 2-point conversion. But they run the 2-point conversion play. Really, you run your running back who hasn't done jack all night. Javonte Williams hasn't done jack all night, and you run them like right up the A gap. Like that's going to work.
Yeah, it was a terrible call.
Who called that play? An offensive guru?
Well, and you mentioned the winning and not covering. Remember, all these primetime games are going under.
Yep.
And we know who everybody bets in primetime game is the over. And, listen, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the NFL has some connections. I'm sure people will get that going soon.
It's like 66%. No joke.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is amazing.
And I like the under again. And really not just because it's in prime time. I really do. If I had to make a bet on tonight's game, I just don't trust it. It feels weird. It feels like Kansas City's going to win like 20-19 or something stupid like that. I like the under in this game. I think I agree with what y'all said about the defenses. I think it's going to be a defensive struggle. I'm also with Gabe that I'm never going to bet against Mahomes. It's just dumb. You do that at your own peril. All right, guys. A fun afternoon. We will be back at it on Wednesday. Again, Datitude will be on Wednesday morning. So a full day of the Bayou Bets crew on Wednesday. Datitude in the morning, Bayou Bets in the afternoon. We will all be back to give our big bucks picks, and we will find out who will be wearing the turkey hat for Thanksgiving. I don't know. Who's going to be called giblets this week? We'll find out on Wednesday. Make sure you join us. Everybody have a great week. Enjoy your family, and we'll see you Wednesday afternoon.